6. Chris Cox, our former member from California, also former SEC chairman, Chris led that, and he said, you know, we shouldn't mess up. Well, what? We shouldn't do anything to destroy the innovation that will happen on the internet. And because of that work, we got the cell phone that's in your pocket, we got data that's roaming across that cell phone, and we got an open internet for innovation. Now, flash forward to our work, we're at that same transformational moment for an operating system that's based on a blockchain that's decentralized, that has all those benefits in what we call Web3. So we're fired up to be here. All three of us were successful innovators, entrepreneurs, business people before we were in Congress. We know that disruption is good, and so we're glad to be here.
I want to go to Senator Hagerty next, because I want to dive a little bit deeper on the Genius Act. Over the past, I guess, week and a half, we've been, the Senate has been looking and doing procedural votes to lead up to the consideration of this bill, and we'll see some more amendments after the recess. But can you talk a little bit about, you know, A, what the Genius Act does, but also why it's so unique and rare to have this on the floor of the Senate, and what the outlook is for passage of this legislation?
Certainly. It's been enormously challenging to get this to the floor of the U.S. Senate. The first major piece of legislation to move through the United States Senate Banking Committee in 8 years was this stablecoin legislation, the Genius Act. And it took almost four hours worth of battling back and forth. Myself largely versus Elizabeth Warren, the ranking member of that committee. She seems to completely dislike anything that's decentralized. I think in her view, only a centralized answer that's frankly susceptible to choke point 3.0 seems to be acceptable in her mind. But after close to 4 hours of debate in committee, respectful debate, and I was ably assisted by Chairman Tim Scott and Cynthia Lummis, back and forth over the net, it came to a vote. And at that point, Senator Warren was able to hold 5 of her Democrat colleagues with her and oppose us. But 5 other Democrats came with us and made this the most bipartisan product to come out of the Senate Banking Committee in a decade. As it came to the floor, there was a major battle again put in place, and I don't know what was said, but Senator Warren again was able to impress upon her Democrat conference that they should tank the bill. They did it. And thanks to Leader Thune, who had enough belief in me and our capacity to come back and get this back on board, it took us about 10 days to really mount the support of the industry and really reflect to the Democrat members of the Senate that this is an important bill. It's a bipartisan bill, and frankly, we have bipartisan agreement on the policy. The question is, are we going to allow politics to permeate? And that's what happened on the first vote, but we brought it back. This time, we have strong, solid bipartisan support. 66 votes. We needed 60 to get it across the finish line. 66 votes have put us into the position right now where we're considering a large number of amendments to the bill. We all want to see this bill as strong as we possibly can, but we also want to see it passed. And that's going to have to happen as soon as we get back. So we're going to be off the state work period this coming week, but as soon as we get back, that's going to be the primary focus of our attention, is to bring the amendment process together and to get this across the finish line. So I'm looking forward to that. And again, it will create the first regulatory framework for this modern technology that we've ever had in America. If we don't do it, we're going to continue to see the seepage of innovation from America overseas. If we get this done, we're going to put America at the forefront, not just of our payment system. That's a great benefit, but also at the forefront of innovation in this critical technology.
Bill, could you also reiterate how important it was for the industry to get involved and call our Democrat colleagues to get that bill on board? Because they had not done that, you wouldn't have gotten your votes.
That is a great point, Rick, because we wouldn't have had this second bite at the apple had it not been for people in the industry informing their Democrat senators and their friends that this is critically important. This isn't just a political opportunity to come and, mash around in the headlines. We've got to get this done if we want to see America remain at the forefront of innovation. And so the calls and the support from the industry were absolutely critical in our ability to flip this back and put it into a bipartisan framework. So thank you for your help with that. Please continue to do it, because it's going to take us another 10 days to get to a point that we can then send it to the House of Representatives.
Well, we're really encouraged by the progress, and I know we're not totally out of the woods yet getting this across the finish line, but we're all working hard and hoping for you to get that over to the House. Maybe we'll head over to Chairman Hill next, because your committee has considered stablecoin legislation as well, and also have circulated a draft around market structure. And I know you have a hearing coming up after the recess on, I think, June 4th, but please tell us about where that stands and sort of what the outlook is for both the stablecoin and the market structure legislation.
Well, first, let me say thanks to my good friend of 5 decades, Bill Hagerty, for his tenacity and perseverance to craft the leadership in the Senate, as Rick and Bill just pointed out, how challenging it has been to have banking committee legislation move. So it's yeoman's work. They've done a marvelous job. They've had strong bipartisan support, and it's demonstrated by the vote that they've achieved. We too have had bipartisan support for about 4 years now in the House on crafting a path forward for digital assets. We had no help from Joe Biden or Gary Gensler, I know everybody's personal favorite, that stalled out the momentum we had, I'd say, between 2018 and 2020 and the pandemic. So we've worked cooperatively with Senate banking on the stablecoin idea, but there's another companion piece we think is important to the ecosystem, and that's called market structure. We've worked on that with the House Ag Committee on a bipartisan basis, and in 2023, so 2 years ago, we passed that across the House floor with 71 Democratic votes. So we have a history of strong bipartisan support on market structure to complement the critical need for a payment stablecoin. And as Kristin said, on June 4th, we'll have a hearing in the Financial Services Committee in the House. There will be a companion hearing the same week in House Agriculture Committee. And we're taking comments now on a revised market structure framework bill that builds on the success of 2023, but is very different. I would say less clunky, more streamlined, and Cynthia Lummis, John Bozeman, both in the Senate have been so helpful to the work we've done on this. Senator Gillibrand from here in New York. But that work the same week that my friends in the Senate will be hopefully very successful in the stablecoin work, we will be advancing market structure through those hearings, and I hope that we can have that progress through the committee soon.
Both of those, I think, would be absolutely major unlocks for the industry going forward, so thank you. I next want to turn to Senator Scott. I think we've talked a lot about the importance of U.S. competitiveness and having innovation here, but there are also national security issues, there are privacy issues, there are a lot of other topics that get brought in when we talk about crypto policy, and I know you've been very supportive of legislation that would prevent the U.S. from having a central bank digital currency, but can you talk a little bit about some of the, these other issues that are related to crypto policy?
So whether we like it or not, there's countries that don't like our way of life. They don't like our freedom. They don't want us to have success. And I think if you look at what's happening in the world, you've got communist China over here, Russia, Iran, North Korea, and they're going to do whatever they can to impact adversely your way of life. So what we've got to do is, on our side, we need to do everything we can to team up with the democracies around the world, and we've got to work to make sure that the bad actors can't have an adverse impact on us. China clearly wants to have a digital currency and control and set up the regulatory environment and control things. So we've got legislation that will prevent that. So the way I think about it is we're going to end up, I think, going into two sort of trading teams. The American team on one side, the Chinese team, and the bad guys on the other. But all of the international regulatory agencies, China's going to try to destroy our opportunity to have success, and we're going to have to fight that every day.
I actually have another question for Representative Hill. You mentioned earlier it was difficult in prior Congresses to work with the White House. Things have obviously changed, and I know earlier this year you got on stage and did a press conference with your colleagues in the Senate and your counterparts on the House Agriculture Committee, and had David Sachs from the White House come, and I've never seen anything like that obviously the White House, the House, and the Senate come together and commit to getting this done. We're also very excited. We have Bo Hines from the White House who's going to be on stage later this afternoon. Can you talk a little bit about the engagement that the White House has had and sort of how you're working with them to get these issues across the finish line?
You bet. It's night and day, and I know Senator Scott and Hagerty will agree completely. So a switch has been turned on, which is we have a President of the United States and Donald Trump that is pro-innovation, pro-American leadership. He knows we're the largest, most liquid, successful capital market in the world and in world history. And it's perfectly logical that we should also lead that in financial technology, as we have in many other areas of technology, in healthcare, in financial services, in chip design and development. So, with that effort, he's mustering the resources of the executive branch at the SEC, the CFTC, the White House staff, under the leadership of a superb advisory team. Not only do we have a good Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, who understands this, but David Sachs, the President's advisor on artificial intelligence and digital assets, is working with both the House and Senate in a hand-in-glove fashion. How can we support the legislative effort, and how can we drive regulatory reform? And both are working well. Let me add one other point on Rick's comment about a central bank digital currency. Under the leadership in the House from Tom Emmer, our majority whip, Warren Davidson from Ohio, we have consistently said we don't believe that we should have a government-owned, government-directed, surveilled consumer central bank digital currency. We shouldn't do it. We want the private sector to innovate on the blockchain, bring payment solutions, manifest that, and lead with an American first point of view about technology development. We don't want the government to do that. So we have marked up Tom Emmer's bill banning the implementation of a central bank digital currency through our committee, and that too will come to the House floor. I want to echo and thank Senator Scott for his focus on this in the Senate.